Hello and welcome back. I am Brian Greer. You're watching Game Brigade, and this is Wild Assent. I figured this would be a perfect opportunity to finally sit down and talk about Wild Assent and whether or not I think this is a game I would recommend for you or my friends who are looking at maybe diving into the campaign. Now, as the point of this video going live, Wild Assent Levon Rising should be going live on GameFound. So if you are watching this because you're looking for more information about that game, which I'm not going to include any campaign details between Levon Rising, this is specifically going to be talking about Wild Assent, but that campaign does include a reprint of this base game. And I think that would be a very good opportunity for you guys to watch and hear what my thoughts are around this hunter campaign-based game. So what is Wild Assent? Wild Assent is a 1 to 4 player, I would say, a campaign game hidden within a dungeon crawler shell, but truly it is a hunt skirmish game. Players are going to be selecting missions and going onto this board where they're going to be competing against different monsters where they're going to either capture or kill them for different types of rewards. But there's more to the game other than that, because on a higher level scale, when you're looking at it, it looks like any other kind of dungeon crawler. But underneath is a unique puzzle that offers a lot of different types of replayability and wonders in terms of trying to discover the best way to solve each map. Let's dive in. So I started talking about this game being a puzzle, and I think the best way to describe that is to kind of explain the game's core mechanics and what it is. So of Wild Assent, you are going to be playing one of 4 seekers. Now, if you're playing solo, you're always going to have 4 characters that you must play. So from that, players will be choosing their mission, their heroes, and every hero has a different type of attribute in terms of magical, ranged, melee, and they all have different types of abilities. You are then going to reference your encampment, and the encampment part of the game, while seeming so minor, is such an important aspect of this puzzle, because the encampment phase is where you're going to level up and train your heroes, as well as use the resources you collected from the hunt to further benefit your champions. At the start of the game, we're going to have only the barracks unlocked, but you're going to unlock 2 more types of buildings. The buildings are described at the bottom. We have the temple, the workshop, the seeker's den, as well as the creature pits. Now, the pens rather, the creature pits, the creature pens. Now, all of these buildings have certain types of attributes attributed to them, but the ones that you unlock will also reference what abilities your characters have unlocked as well. For example, my character of Zakos over here, I have an ability called Rune Work, and requires me to have a level 1 workshop upgraded. So I must have at least level 1 on the workshop unlocked for this ability to be unlocked. And to represent that, I would then place an unlock token on top of that. Through all of my 5 abilities, they all have different types of requirements. For example, Route requires the Seeker's Den and a level 2 barracks. So once you've leveled up those items, he then unlocks that ability. So with that, you have also different types of people that you can hire to fill out the slots here in your dungeon, your encampment rather. And through that, you are going to draw 3 of these characters. You don't know what they are. They're going to be randomly drawn, and you're going to review them. And based on what you have here, they'll have benefits that they're going to provide to your camp. They're also going to provide benefits to what type of building you have. So you're going to choose one to hire and just place them on your map. This part of the game seems subtle, but there's a lot to it in terms of deciding what kind of level up you want to do, what kind of buildings you want to target, and how you're going to implement the different types of upgrades for all 4 of your party, because every party is going to have a different combinations of buildings they're going to need to unlock. So do we focus on 2 of our characters and leave the other 2 to have 0 unlocks? We try to give at least one player at least one special ability. That will be for the players to decide. But from that, players will then dive into the actual arena of the battle arena here located in the center, where players are going to follow a pre-designed setup based on the mission you drew, as well as the random number that you draw that tells you what setup you're going to take. And through that, you're going to have a setup. For example, you can have a champion who's isolated from the rest of the group and everyone has to spawn over here while all the monsters are over here. So you're going to have to try to rescue or get back with your player. You might have, there's different types of scenarios. They're also going to tell you where you're going to place the different types of debris. Now, the decision points of where you place your heroes to the type of loadout you want to take all determines with this type of puzzle. And then through that, we actually will begin the combat, where the combat is fairly simple, but not to the point of being simple where it's unfun. I would say it's more familiar in terms of it makes sense of what it's trying to do. And the way the combat works is you have a deck of cards based on the creatures that were told to be put into the map. And basically every map you do, you're going to select a creature you're going to hunt, such as the Phoenix. And the Phoenix mission might tell you that you're going to include 2 other random creatures. So we might have this water elemental, for example, and another one, this griffin. You might have other creatures that you're going to be spawning. And then from that, you will then have your deck of cards that symbolizes from those. And you're going to draw one for the creatures on their turn. So for example, this is actually the fire toad that I drew. And the way these cards read is it's going to tell you one who it's going to target. He says target enemy. Obviously, it's going to target an enemy. And then he says lowest MDef. MDef stands for magic defense. So it's going to target the character who has the lowest magic defense, which we then reference our character boards. And my character has 1 magic defense. For the sake of keeping the review going, we'll say that he's the only one with the lowest. And if there are people who are tied, if there's another player with the 1 magic defense, he's going to target the nearest one based off the quickest route to him. He then will advance 4. So let's say this was him and he was targeting this guy. He would try to advance 4 to get as close as he can to me. And they'll say magic attack, range 2. We count the range. It definitely equals that. And then he will have a base damage 3. On this card, they're actually a little more difficult. I'll put it here in the center so you guys can see that. But it says 3/4/4. Based on the level of monster you're fighting is what it referenced to here. For example, I've pulled another monster here to kind of give an example. This monster has 3 different full pips. That references that monster is a level 3. While this identical monster only has 2 pips for a level 2. And this identical monster only has 1 pip for level 1. So depending on the type of monsters you are fighting, which ones you have drawn, that will determine what you're going to face here on the slash. So if I was facing this guy, I would reference the last one on that sheet. But for easy sake, we're just going to use the first number. So he has a range 2 with his base damage of 3. That means no matter what, he'll always be doing at least 3 damage. And then it says attack dice. He's going to be rolling 2 attack dice, which are these white dice. You'll roll them, and that would add a damage and a special. And it says if the target is burning, assign damage. That would obviously reference some sort of static effect. So if he was not burning, we're not going to assign any damage. So obviously the monsters in that scenario would be attempting to burn our players. So that's the basic idea of the combat. Players will then go back and do the same. We'll reference our sheet down here. Our guy can move 1, so he can move up here 1. He then has a base attack of 3 with 3 dice. So he would roll his 3 dice. In this situation, I got 1 damage. And then I could refer to my sheets to see if there's anything that I could do that potentially could help me with this damage. Do I have a special? No, I didn't get any special. Teamwork? No, it doesn't work here. So I'll just steal 4 damage total and reference his his physical damage to see how much total damage he'll take. This will keep going on and on until all the creatures are either killed or captured. Now, players can capture a monster. The way players will do that, as long as they're adjacent to a monster, they can begin capturing it. But based on the level of the monster, you're going to need the level of the monster +1 for champions to capture that monster. So basically imagine you've got these guys, with the hooks, and they're throwing the hooks over and they're locking it into place. But this one, if this was a level 1 monster, I'm going to need another hero to move over here to get adjacent to lock another one to finally secure it and lock her down. And that will allow us to get whatever resources or gold for, completing that objective of locking him down. If we were to kill the monster, we'll get the resources based on the type of resource that monster drops. So this trench worm has the blood symbol at the top by his name, so we'll have the blood out. So if we were to kill a trench worm, we would then get the blood, which we can then reference back at our caravan, our camp, to level up our items or buy something, whatever we may do with that stuff. So when I talk about a puzzle, though, let's talk about what that means and why I think it's important to consider this more than just a simple dungeon crawler. Because everything I just explained is what you would see in a dungeon crawler. Very simple idea in terms of the combat, the movement. You would see this in every other game. So what sets Wild Assent differently than other games, and what might make this more of a game for you? I think it comes into the idea that everything you do on each hunt matters and carries forward throughout the campaign. Now, you can play this game, the campaign, the 10 scenario campaigns individually if you just want to do a sit down and play around. You're more than welcome to. The game's fun. But to really get the enjoyment of the game is where you start building up your camp and you start taking everything you've done here forward. And that includes damage. So when your character receives damage, you're going to be tracking along this board. Every character will have their little token with their head on it, and you're going to be sliding that damage down. When you have completed the objective, when you've killed all the monsters or captured whatever you needed to capture, and you return back to your encampment, whatever damage was done will remain. So if you had a character die, they're going to stay dead until we get back to camp, and then they're going to recover X amount of health based on the level of whatever buildings you have done on your encampment. So that might be only 5 health recovered. That means going into the next mission, you're going to only have 5 health. So the decisions matter of how risky do you want to be as you try to push damage. Yes, you might want to take your brawler, your tank, and push him into the combat to keep him in the middle of it. But how much damage is it worth for him to take that damage before you use someone else to kind of absorb and help him out? You have this balancing act you're trying to play with as each player tries to determine what is most worth it for them to risk in terms of the damage. I think it's a very interesting mechanic and really brings out the enjoyment of Wild Assent. And as soon as you start seeing the different layers of this cake, as you kind of get deeper and deeper, you realize that there's a lot more depth here for it. So in terms of that, let's talk about everything that I liked about Wild Assent. Obviously, I just kind of raved a bit about the puzzle aspect, and I think that's the first thing I'm going to start off with is the elegant and the excellent idea at the core of what Wild Assent is trying to do. It's trying to be a hunter game, and I originally looked at this as a mini boss battler. It doesn't play like that at all. And I think looking at this more as a puzzle that you're trying to solve while using common dungeon crawl mechanics that we're all used to and comfortable with is the best way to describe it. And I had a lot of fun when I played this game. There were a few things that I had problems with, and we'll get to that. But the overall core concept of this game, the idea, the way it's implemented is very good, and I very much enjoyed it. When I did the unboxing for Wild Assent, I raved about the component quality from the foam inserts to the texture and quality of the miniatures. I will say, now that I've played the game, there are some things that I have some complaints with that. Mostly because these are full resin miniatures, they are very fragile. We've had several break, not even through playing, just trying to remove them from the foam inserts. The overall aesthetic appeal of the game, I actually really like, especially the back sides of these cards with these black and white kind of parchment paper-like design where they have the creature written out and designed on it. then you flip it over, and it has as if it's a most wanted like poster with each design. The aesthetics of this game are incredible. I brought out my art book in case anyone was curious about what an art book might look like for a game like this. I very much enjoyed it, and I talked about this on the stream as well. The art book has a ton of different types of lore in it, as well as great full art pictures. So if you are looking to paint the product, this, in my opinion, was a necessity, and I'm very glad that I got this. But I'm also a person who talks highly about art books because I enjoy having them in my collection. The miniatures, though, are a little, in terms of the gameplay aspects, a little bit too similar. Just looking at this board right now without knowing who's who, it can become difficult to reference what players are players and which ones are monsters. And so without a very good idea of where everyone started, you can get lost in the mess. Is this a jumbled heap of man a character, or is that a monster, or is this my character? Now, obviously, I know who's who because I've played this game, but it's easy to get lost. And I feel like if they had done something in terms of changing the player miniatures to be a different color, maybe a darker gray, or vice versa, changing the monster colors to be a little darker, might have been a touch to help out the game. But overall, the miniature quality is good. I definitely think that they're going to see an improvement on them going forward with the new GameFound crowdfunding. I definitely just want to make sure we're checking to see what kind of quality component of the miniatures they're doing, as well as are they changing anything in terms of the base coloring? Are we going to see an improvement of that? And I found myself now kind of rambling about what I didn't like about the game, so I guess I'll just kind of roll with that a little bit more. So you can add the minor things about the miniatures and the insert to some of the things I didn't like. And most of the things that I didn't like are not actually picky to the game in terms of problems that I have with the game. I think everything is easily fixed. It just takes more time, especially from the developer, to push these out. But I think the most important thing that I want to talk about was this. The rule book is lacking, to say the least. And I know there are other content creators and reviewers who have mentioned the rule book, and I thought I'd go into this and it would be fine. But no, the rule book really is a big problem for this game. And there's not enough external resources available to players through Board Game Geek or Reddit or anything to really understand how the game is supposed to be interpreted and played. I think there's too much nuance and wiggle room in terms of what the creator might be expecting. And so little things like that started to detract. I would say the first playthrough we took, now an average gameplay should take about 45 minutes to an hour and a half based on how you're handling the mission. My first gameplay took over 3 hours, mostly because we're constantly referring the rule book, trying to understand different interactions. If a monster buffs itself, how long does that buff stay? And I think the biggest complaint was not only is the hunt book lacking, but you have to start utilizing the arena book for answers for situations in the hunt book. And that is not very intuitive in terms of trying to figure out a rule. And most of those rules, we didn't even know if they carried over to the hunt because we're specifically reading the rule book. And that might be stances or something like route or taunt. What does taunt mean? How does that affect work? And so most of the stuff that the rulebook really needed was an index. It needs a glossary to tell you exactly what does everything mean. Taunt. What does taunt mean? If I need to see the actual section of the rulebook, the page number where I can find it. Things like that are so super important, especially with a game which has so many different moving parts. They're definitely needed. And there's also some clerical mistakes in terms of how these dice are implemented. The rulebook says two different things between what the star symbol means and the sword symbol. So obviously the star symbol looks like it means special, but it says attack. We obviously it must, because of the way it's only one of them are on the dice, we assumed it's got to mean special. So little things like that as we're playing, just little mistakes, little things that should have been fixed through play testing, but definitely kind of fell through the cracks. I suspect when Levon Risings launches, though, most of these problems and critiques of the rulebook and the fiddliness of the game will be addressed. And I didn't really talk about the fiddliness, but I think that needs to be addressed, is the amount of tokens in the game. Now, we have 3 different boxes here I brought out. Every box has its own insert for you to place tokens. And you need every single square inch of these inserts to place all of the random tokens that you get. And some of these tokens, you don't even know what they're for, because the glossary in the book doesn't even show you what everything does. So you have to have a better understanding of where everything goes, and then try to figure out how are we going to sort them to have them be the most effective. It's a mess. I pray that they have a better solution for status effects and how they want to implement the different types of scenarios. I mean, you can have a token with this guy's face, not necessarily saying that it's him, but you could have a token with his face, of a square token, a big circle token, a mini circle token, and just maybe a small square. Like, you could have 4 tokens with the same guy's face. I don't even know what those, and then they have different backs. So like, okay, maybe I understand what the backs are. Some of them have the same back, and you're like, I just don't know what these can be for. It's a little fiddly. I personally recommend, when I play the game, is we try to see everything that we're going to need for that specific mission based on our characters. Do we have any cripple characters? Do we have any status effects that our people play? Make sure all those are out and ready to go, because if you need to dig for a specific token, you will take half your playtime trying to find that specific token, mostly because the insert fails you in terms of helping you sort them into any kind of meanable situation. But again, easy fix. These are things that are fixable, that are not a problem of the game. So I think that will wrap it up. I will be giving this game a score, and I think I'm going to be giving it 2 scores. I'll be giving it what it is in its current form and what I think it could be. Now, this is be a subjective part. The could be is subjective, based on if the rule book was clear and made it more of an enjoyable experience. Because I don't even think 3 or 4 times that we've played through this, we even were playing most of it right, which is unfortunate to say. It's just hard to know. Sometimes it felt like things weren't right. So in its current form, I would say it rates, and this is a hard one, because if you know my scale, 10, we do 1 out of 10, and 10 is being a perfect game, which I've never given a 10. I don't think I'll ever will. 9, though, if anywhere is in the 9s, it's pinnacle of gaming. It's near perfection. Everything about it is something I love. It's a game I think everyone should own and be a mainstay in your collection. And 8s are incredible games, great games. There's some problems with them, but they're usually things you can buy with. And I think that's where this sits. But where does it sit along that scale? And I think in its current form, I'd give it an 8.1. But if I see things fixed, if I see the rulebook corrected, if I see little things touched here and there, this game could be an 8.9, maybe a 9.0. There's enough here to make it interesting. And the fact that we have 2 different modes, which I didn't even touch on, the skirmish mode, there's a lot here. A lot of gameplay, a lot of fun. Well worth your investment if this is something you are looking for. And so that is my review. 8.1, potentially 8.9. We'll see on a 9. I really I'd have to play the game again in a good finalized component to be able to say it at 9.0 or higher. But it's close. There's definitely a lot going on. And I'm excited to see what Levon Rising is going to provide. A deeper campaign. Sounds intriguing. More monsters to fight. More interesting interactions. I'm very excited for it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will talk to you all very soon.